I got my mistress pregnant. Let's get a divorce. So, this woman you've been seeing, she's pregnant now? I'm guessing your little affair didn't just start a month ago, did it? We've been together for about a year now. I guess you could call it an affair. I didn't want to hide it and risk causing more drama later on, so I'll pay the alimony for an affair-based divorce. I laughed bitterly. I see. So, all those late nights at work and solo weekend outings weren't just to escape taking care of Lizzie, but also to meet up with your mistress. That's right. I had been left to shoulder the burden of caring for Lizzie, my mother-in-law, after she was diagnosed with dementia. It was a challenging situation on its own, but then my husband disappeared for a month without a word, only to return suddenly with his mistress in tow. To make matters worse, he brazenly declared his infidelity and referred to his mistress as his lover right in front of me. The term wasn't inaccurate, but I couldn't help but wonder if his mistress would be angered by such a blatant label. To my surprise, she simply smiled at me in silence. It was eerie, the way she grinned after being called a mistress. Was she that desperate to marry my husband? Well, if she wanted him that badly, she could have him. Fine, but from now on, Lizzie's care is your responsibility, I stated firmly. What? Caring for her is your job, isn't it? You quit your job, so you don't have an income. I'll give you some money, so just keep taking care of that demented old hag. I'll pay extra, so handle the housework too. If you expect me to come to this house, does that mean you two will be living here? That's not going to work, because this house is going to be gone soon. They had no idea what was coming. I hoped my husband's mistress would suffer plenty after getting her hands on my husband. And I wanted my husband, oblivious as he was, to thoroughly regret leaving me. My name is Adele. A 50-year-old company employee married to pay, who also works for a company. We have a daughter, Anita, who recently graduated from college, got a job, and moved out on her own. Our child-rearing days were officially over. Looking back, despite the various struggles, those memories were all precious to me. With our daughter out of the house, I thought Pei and I would continue working while enjoying a relaxed life together as a couple. But then, the unthinkable happened. I told you I was worried about leaving her alone, I sighed, exasperated. It's fine now. She's safe and sound, isn't she? We had rushed to the hospital after receiving a call that Lizzie had collapsed. My husband was now voicing his frustrations to Lizzie, who lay sleeping on the hospital bed. Apparently, Lizzie had suffered a cerebral hemorrhage. Although she managed to survive, the after effects left her with vascular dementia. I can't take any more of Mom's selfish demands. I nodded in agreement. You're right. Let's start making arrangements right away. At that moment, my husband and I decided to move in with Lizzie, without her consent. Lizzie was already 80 years old and had been living alone for the past 5 years, ever since my father-in-law passed away. When my husband's father died, we had suggested that Lizzie move in with us, but I'm not going to live with you, she had declared stubbornly. I'm finally on my own, so let me live my life freely. I'm finally on my own, so let me live my life freely. But we're worried about what might happen to you, Lizzie, I had pleaded. What do you mean, what might happen? Don't treat me like some helpless old lady. Sure, I've got one foot in the grave, but I can still take care of my own house, she had retorted. Don't say things like that. I absolutely refuse to live with you, and that's final, Lizzie had insisted. We had persisted in suggesting the idea of living together, but no matter what we said, Lizzie remained adamant about not wanting to cohabitate. As a result, my husband and I had relented and decided to visit Lizzie's home as often as possible and keep in touch with her regularly. However, even that seemed to displease Lizzie. Having you come over to my house all the time like this is really unsettling, she had complained. Please don't say that. We'll leave right away, I had reassured her. If you're just going to leave right away, then there's no need for you to come in the first place. Are you after my valuables or something? Or are you here for the inheritance? There's no money in this house, you know, she had accused. That's not why we're here at all. Whenever we went to check on Lizzie, she would often yell at us. The Lizzie of the past had been so kind, helping out a great deal when our daughter was young, calling to check if we were having any troubles with child rearing or our marriage. But after her husband passed away, she had changed a little. Now that Lizzie had collapsed, we could no longer indulge her selfish whims. In Lizzie's hospital room, as she slept, my husband and I exchanged glances, confirming in each other's expressions that our resolve was firm. We decided to force the issue of living together, no matter how much venom Lizzie might spew at us later. I'm sorry. This is going to be a bigger burden on you. It's fine, really. I'm only 50, so if I put my mind to it, I'm sure I can find another job, I reassured him. As we made preparations to move into my in-laws' home, my husband kept apologizing to me repeatedly. From now on, I would be quitting my job to devote myself to supporting Lizzie, who had developed dementia. This was my way of repaying Lizzie for taking care of me in the past. It was also an apology for not having forced the issue of living together sooner, before things had come to this. You came. Thank you. I'm sorry for causing you trouble, Lizzie said, her voice weak. Not at all. We're the ones who will be imposing on you, I replied, trying to sound cheerful. I had expected Lizzie to spew venom at me once we started living together, but to my surprise, she welcomed me warmly. The atmosphere was reminiscent of the kind Lizzie from the past. At this rate, I thought we could manage living together without any issues. However, problems began to surface in unexpected ways. Lizzie was more energetic than we had imagined. She could walk on her own, so she didn't need much assistance around the house, and her speech was clear. The content of her conversations, though, was a bit problematic. The flower field over there was so beautiful. Let's go there together next time, Adele. Sounds good. Let's go together with pay, Lizzie suggested, sipping her tea as she recounted a day trip she claimed to have taken yesterday. It seemed she had enjoyed it so much that she wanted to take me along. However, the day trip Lizzie was referring to had taken place not yesterday, but 20 years ago. She had mistaken it for a recent trip and was sharing her travel memories with me. I continued to listen to Lizzie's stories with a smile, without correcting or drawing attention to her confusion. It appeared that Lizzie's dementia had made it difficult for her to distinguish between past and present memories. As a result, she would occasionally talk about events from decades ago as if they had happened recently. If that were the only issue, I thought it wouldn't be a major problem since I could simply listen to her stories. However, I quickly realized that this assumption was naive. Having you come over to my house all the time like this is really unsettling. Can't you leave soon? Lizzie grumbled. Lizzie, we're already living together, I reminded her gently. I'm not going to live with you. Don't say such nonsense, she retorted, stomping off to her room. In situations like this, pressing the issue would only escalate Lizzie's anger, so I had no choice but to wait until she calmed down. Worried that Lizzie might do something dangerous, I would occasionally check on her room while going about my household chores. Lizzie acted on her thoughts. Whether they stemmed from past memories or ideas that popped into her head at the moment, so caution was necessary. Where are the forks? Lizzie asked, rummaging through the drawers. Forks? Why are you looking for forks? Are you going to eat something? Of course I'm looking for them because I'm going to eat, Lizzie snapped. But didn't we just have dinner? It's for the cake roll after the meal, right? I'll bring it out now. I interjected, hoping to defuse the situation. Wow, you understood that so well. I have no idea what Mom is trying to say anymore. She mentioned she was looking forward to it this afternoon, so it was easy to figure out this time. But there are times when even I don't understand. I admitted. Still, that's impressive. The other day, I couldn't understand what Mom wanted, and she threw a fit. It was quite troubling. I brought out 3 slices of cake roll, and we enjoyed the after-dinner dessert as a family. However, my husband quickly finished his portion and retreated to his room. After dessert, I listened to Lizzie's cheerful chatter as usual. Previously, my husband would join me in listening to Lizzie's stories, but now he was trying to keep his distance from her. At first, my husband had been proactive about caring for Lizzie, but it seemed more challenging than he had anticipated, and he gradually left everything related to Lizzie up to me. To distance himself from Lizzie, he started coming home late from work and going out alone on his days off. I had quit my job to support Lizzie. However, I realized that if things continued this way, my husband might think it was okay not to help at all, so I finally decided to confront him. Don't you think you could listen to Lizzie's stories a bit more? You're starting to leave everything to me, and it's like you're avoiding your mother, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. That's not true. I'm just tired from work and don't want to get caught up in Mom's long conversations or hysterics at home. That's the problem. I'm not asking you to help more. I just want you to lend a hand a little, and I don't want you to dump everything on me like this. I explained, my frustration growing. Fine. You don't have to get hysterical too. My husband muttered, walking out of the living room as if to escape from me. I regretted not phrasing it better. But at least I had gotten a commitment from him. I thought this meant he wouldn't completely abandon Lizzie's care to me. That was supposed to be the case, but my husband tried to fulfill his promise in a way I hadn't imagined. I'm sorry. You just started working, and it must be tough for you. I apologized to my daughter as I handed her a cup of tea. It's okay, since it's only occasionally. And I want to see Grandma too. Anita reassured me, taking the tea to Lizzie and starting to listen to her stories in my place. While they chatted, I went out shopping. Anita started coming home and helping out in various ways, which was a great relief for me. However, this wasn't something I had asked for. Oh, Anita. You're here. You're always such a big help. What were you thinking, going out alone again? If you're here, then I'm not needed, right? That's not the issue, Anita exclaimed. When my husband, who had been off work and out playing since the morning, returned home, our daughter scolded him as soon as she saw his face. Watching my daughter scold my husband, I couldn't help but sigh. The reason Anita started coming home was that my husband had asked her to help out a bit because caring for Lizzie was challenging. I had only wanted my husband to help a little, but he had delegated that small amount of assistance to our daughter. Our kind-hearted daughter had agreed to come, but when it came down to it, my husband wasn't helping at all. It was only natural for Anita to be angry. However, no matter how much Anita scolded him, my husband's attitude didn't improve. If anything, it seemed to worsen the situation, as he thought everything was fine now that Anita was helping, and he completely avoided anything related to Lizzie. While I was grateful for Anita's assistance, it was only occasional. In the end, I found myself caring for Lizzie almost entirely on my own. You hid my clothes, didn't you? Lizzie accused me, her eyes blazing with anger. I didn't do anything like that. You probably forgot where you put them. Shall we look for them together? I offered, trying to keep my voice calm and soothing. Don't give me that innocent act. What a horrible person you are. Do you enjoy bullying an old woman that much? You wicked daughter-in-law. Lizzie spat, her words dripping with venom. About a year had passed since I started taking care of Lizzie by myself. If you looked at it day by day, the stress of caring for Lizzie wasn't that significant. However, when it continued for a year, the stress gradually accumulated. Moreover, caregiving wasn't the only source of my stress. Hey, keep it down. Don't make me raise my voice. If anything, the main cause of my stress was him. My husband still didn't lift a finger to help and had completely dumped everything related to Lizzie on me. I had tried to keep him informed about important matters, but... You know how Lizzie called the real estate agent on her own and tried to sign some contract? I began, hoping to discuss the issue with him. You told them she has dementia, so they invalidated it, right? Yes, but to prevent the same thing from happening again. I persisted, trying to convey the gravity of the situation. I'll pass on that kind of troublesome talk. Taking care of Mom is your job. My husband cut me off, fiddling with his phone as he walked out of the living room. I had reached a point where he wouldn't even listen to me. This had been going on for a year, and I was understandably feeling quite down. I was still managing for now, but at this rate, my mental health might eventually deteriorate. One day, as I was worrying about this, an incident occurred that severely drained my emotional reserves. I'm telling you, it wasn't me. Stop making false accusations. It was you, wasn't it? I saw you do it. Fix it right now. Lizzie demanded, her tone equally furious. That's obviously impossible. Have Adele take you to the optician tomorrow or something. As I was cleaning up after dinner, I suddenly heard my husband and Lizzie's angry voices. I hurriedly stopped washing the dishes, wiped my wet hands, and headed to the living room. What's going on? I asked, trying to assess the situation. She's saying I broke her reading glasses. You broke them right in front of me. Lizzie insisted, her eyes narrowed in accusation. Stop making false accusations, you demented old hag. Hey, what kind of way is that to talk? I admonished him, shocked by his callous attitude. Shut up! I can't take this anymore. Staying in this house is nothing but a source of stress. My husband yelled, roughly shoving my shoulder to force me aside as he stormed out of the house. The pain in my shoulder from his push and the unreasonable words he had hurled at me left me unable to muster the energy to chase after him or call out to him. I simply watched his retreating back, feeling utterly defeated. It was him who broke them. Lizzie insisted, her voice trembling with anger and frustration. I understand. Let's go to the optician tomorrow. For tonight, please bear with it without your reading glasses. I said, trying to placate her. I'm always causing you trouble. Thank you. Lizzie said, her tone softening. What are you saying? This is only natural. I reassured her, my heart aching at her vulnerability. As I cleaned up the broken reading glasses from the table, I listened to Lizzie's story. Lizzie sometimes got angry out of nowhere or said things that didn't make much sense, but she also had moments when she reverted to the kind Lizzie I knew. I believed that it was this kind Lizzie's presence that kept me sane. That day, my husband, who had left the house, didn't return. Well, I thought he would come back eventually, so I didn't pay much attention to it. However, he didn't return the next day or the day after that. I got worried and called him several times, but he wouldn't pick up. About 2 weeks after my husband left the house, I finally received a message from him. It was just 6 characters long, saying he would return eventually. Since he said he would come back eventually, and he wasn't a child, I decided not to worry about it. Honestly, my husband had been the main source of my stress, so it was actually a relief to have him gone. After being married for over 20 years, this is what a marital relationship is like. However, another 2 weeks passed, and a month went by without my husband returning home. I started to worry again and was thinking about calling him when he suddenly came back. "Hey, I'm back. Come on, come in. This is going to be our home now." "What? What do you mean?" When I greeted my husband at the entrance, I was perplexed by his attitude, as if nothing had happened in the past month. What confused me even more was the unfamiliar woman standing next to my husband. She looked to be in her late 30s, relatively young. My husband took the woman's hand and entered the house as if it were the most natural thing in the world, heading straight for the living room. I was so taken aback that I froze at the entrance. A few seconds later, I came to my senses and hurriedly followed my husband and the woman. When I arrived at the living room, my husband and the woman were sitting on the sofa as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I stood in front of my husband, demanding an explanation. "What do you mean, this is going to be your home? Where have you been for the past month? And who is this woman?" I asked, my voice rising with each question. "Don't bombard me with questions like that. But I guess one answer will suffice for all of them," he said, his tone dismissive. I had intended to intimidate my husband, but he didn't seem to be listening at all. Instead, he had an eerie smile on his face, and I had a bad feeling about what was to come. "I got my mistress pregnant. Let's get a divorce," he said, his words hitting me like a ton of bricks. My husband's words made me feel dizzy, and I thought I might collapse. I had a vague suspicion, but it seemed the woman was indeed his mistress. He must have been staying with her for the past month. Was he getting carried away with the idea of remarrying a younger woman? Or was he elated that he had gotten a woman in her late 30s pregnant at his age of over 50? He was calling his mistress his lover right in front of her. The term wasn't incorrect, but wouldn't the mistress get angry at being called that? That's what I thought, but the mistress just smiled at me in silence. Despite being called a mistress, she was smiling. It was quite eerie. Did she want to marry my husband that badly? If she was fine with a husband like him, she could have him. She could have my husband and suffer to her heart's content. My ignorant husband would also deeply regret leaving me, I thought. My husband and his mistress had smug expressions on their faces, as if they had one. They probably intended to kick me out of this house and live here together with their future child. If they wanted a divorce, that was fine, but before that, there were several things I needed to confirm with my husband. "That woman is pregnant, right? Then your relationship couldn't have started just this past month, could it?" I asked, my voice steady. "We've been together for about a year now. This would be considered an affair, right? I don't want to hide it and risk causing trouble later, so I'll pay the alimony for an affair," he said, his tone almost boastful. "I see. So, coming home late from work and going out alone on your days off weren't just to escape from caring for Lizzie, but also to meet that woman," I concluded, piecing it all together. "That's right. Actually, about Mom's reading glasses, I really did break them to get away from home for a few days. I was planning to come back in about 3 days, but during that time, her pregnancy was discovered. So, after discussing what to do, we decided to have you leave," he explained, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. "Fine, then please take care of Lizzie's caregiving from now on," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. My husband's incredibly childish words and actions made me lose any desire to have a discussion, so I decided to leave the scene quickly. However, I was made painfully aware that my husband's immaturity exceeded my imagination. Huh? Caregiving is your job, isn't it? You quit your job. You don't have an income, right? I'll give you some money, so keep taking care of that demented old hag. I'll pay extra, so take care of the housework too, he demanded, his tone dismissive. Hearing my husband's words, I felt like his mistress's smirk grew stronger. Seeing her expression, I kind of understood why she didn't get angry when my husband called her his mistress. What's your name? I asked, turning to the woman. It's Kendall, why? She replied, her tone almost bored. Kendall, I'm sorry to ask, but what's your job? I inquired, trying to keep my composure. I'm a part-timer, why? She said, her expression guarded. Will you continue working after marrying my husband? I pressed, needing to know. I've been told I can just become a housewife, so I'm planning to quit, why? She responded, her tone defensive. It seemed my hunch was correct. My husband was trying to make me take care of Lizzie and do the housework even after our divorce. He said he would pay me, but he probably only intended to give me a small allowance. If I were to take care of the house, what would his mistress do as a housewife? He probably told her she wouldn't have to do anything. His mistress could live comfortably, so she must have decided to marry my husband. Even if I left the house, with my husband's family home, she could raise her child with peace of mind and rely on my husband's money. That must have been good enough for her. My husband probably thought that having a young wife and a cute child would be enough. However, the life they envisioned in this house would never come to pass. If you expect me to come to this house, does that mean you two will be living here? That's not going to work, because this house is going to be gone soon. What are you talking about? This house is going to disappear? That's right. Lizzie is planning to sell this house and use the money to enter a nursing home. I explained, my voice calm and steady. Sell the house? Isn't that what that demented old hag was trying to do when she contacted the real estate agent on her own? I thought we talked to the real estate agent and had the contract nullified. Don't tell me she tried to proceed with the contract again after that? But I can't imagine that someone with dementia could properly handle contract discussions. Last time, the real estate agent contacted us to confirm she was trying to proceed with the contract on her own, so we found out. This time, I handled the procedures on her behalf. I stated matter-of-factly. The house should be in Lizzie's name. There's no way you could easily sell the house on her behalf. If you're going to lie, at least make it more believable. It's not a lie. I've become Lizzie's legal guardian. So, I've gained the authority to manage her assets on her behalf. I can sell real estate, sign contracts for nursing care services, and even discuss the division of inheritance. I explained, watching the realization dawn on his face. So, that means you can do anything on Lizzie's behalf? Not anything, but roughly speaking, yes. I confirmed, nodding my head. Why are you the one handling such important procedures? If someone is going to become her legal whatever, it should be me, her son. Remember about 6 months ago when Lizzie contacted the real estate agent on her own? I tried to consult with you to prevent the same thing from happening again. But you said you'd pass on such troublesome discussions and that Lizzie was my responsibility, dumping it all on me. So, I proceeded with the procedures. I reminded him, my voice tinged with frustration. Realizing that I was in a position to sell the house on Lizzie's behalf, my husband seemed quite flustered. It was only natural, given that he had just found out the house he planned to live in with his mistress would soon disappear. In an attempt to protect the house he intended to live in, my husband appeared to be considering his words for a counterattack against me. Sweat beaded on his forehead. No matter how much he racked his brain, there was no way he could retaliate against me, but after a while, my husband's expression suddenly changed. Let's hear what he came up with. You sold this house to create money for Lizzie to enter a nursing home, right? Is that Lizzie's intention? Lizzie has dementia. I can't believe she's capable of expressing such intentions. Isn't this just you using the rights of being her legal whatever because you don't want to take care of Lizzie? You're planning to put Lizzie in a nursing home for your own sake. What a terrible person you are. Pei accused, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. I thought my husband had noticed something important. However, the conclusion he reached was worth 0 points. Lizzie sometimes talks about past memories as if they were current memories, right? You wouldn't know because you've been avoiding Lizzie, but there have been times when she's reverted back to the Lizzie from before we started living together. During those times, Lizzie told me various things. Remember how she opposed living together and had a cold attitude towards us after your father passed away? It seems she didn't want to interfere with our married life. So, she had originally planned to sell the house and enter a nursing home, but she tried to endure until the very end because the house was filled with memories of your father. Then, she collapsed from a cerebral hemorrhage. So, when she contacted the real estate agent on her own before, her memories from that time probably resurfaced, and she thought she had to contact the real estate agent. So, I'm respecting Lizzie's past intentions and selling the house on her behalf, making preparations for her to enter a nursing home. I clarified, my voice firm and resolute. Why didn't you tell me about selling the house and putting Lizzie in a nursing home? Pei demanded, his voice rising with anger. Didn't you say Lizzie was my responsibility and dump everything on me? So, I thought it would be fine to tell you once all the preparations were finalized. But when push came to shove, you left the house for a whole month and were unreachable. What else could I do? I countered, my patience wearing thin. Understanding that he wouldn't be able to live the life he had imagined with his mistress, my husband's shoulders slumped in defeat. However, it seemed he hadn't lost hope for the future yet. Well, if Lizzie enters a nursing home, that means we won't have to take care of her. And even if I have to pay alimony, I can still divorce you. Then I can marry Kendall. I was shocked about the house disappearing, but it doesn't seem like that big of a deal for me. Unfortunately, I was about to extinguish that hope as well. I think you two will have a tough time ahead with money and other things, but do your best. I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. What? Money and stuff? Isn't the money for Lizzie to enter the nursing home coming from selling this house? Actually, this house is old, so we have to demolish it and sell just the land. The demolition costs are surprisingly high. Well, after subtracting the demolition costs from the money we get from selling the land, it'll be around $80,000. So, that $80,000 will go to Lizzie, right? Geez, don't scare me like that. That's a lot of money coming in, isn't it? Well, about the nursing home Lizzie is planning to enter, we ended up choosing a pretty nice place. Just the initial move-in fee is around $30,000. I revealed, bracing myself for his reaction. Even so, there's still $50,000 left, right? The monthly fee for the nursing home is $3,000. Said, watching his face fall. $3,000? With that, $50,000 will be gone in just a little over a year. We'll need money for things other than paying the nursing home, so it might be gone in less than a year. But don't worry. There are various programs available, so Kendall, I'll leave the rest to you. What? Me? I don't know what to do if you tell me that all of a sudden. Pei, you know what to do, right? Do it for me, Kendall pleaded, her eyes wide with fear. I don't know anything either. I've been dumping everything about Mom on Adele until now. More importantly, why did you choose such an expensive nursing home? If Lizzie enters a nursing home, I can work again, right? So, I was planning to find a new job and pay the fees myself after using up Lizzie's money. I've already found a job and will start working next month. Since my career break was only about a year, I found one quickly. But I don't need to save money for Lizzie anymore, right? I said, my voice calm and collected. No, we're having a child, and we'll have to rent a house since this one is disappearing, and there's alimony for you. $3,000 a month is impossible. Please. Can't you reconsider selling the house and the nursing home? No. Selling the house and the nursing home were already decided. By the way, the only way to cancel the legal guardianship midway is if the person's judgment ability recovers. I stated firmly, leaving no room for argument. So, even if we get divorced, you'll be managing Lizzie's assets, right? That's right. I'll protect the money from selling the house, so don't get any funny ideas, I warned, my tone stern. Realizing that the happy life he had envisioned with his mistress would not come to pass, my husband slumped in defeat once again. Seeing his reaction, his mistress also began to panic. Wait, what does this mean? You said there's a house, and even though Lizzie has dementia, she'll croak in a few years because of her age, so we wouldn't have to take care of her that much, right? But now the house is being sold and will disappear, and Lizzie will use that money? And from what you're saying now, it seems like we'll have to deal with the high nursing home fees. This is completely different from what I heard, but you can afford to live like that, right? Kendall demanded, her voice shrill with anger. I'm sorry. The situation has changed. If possible, could you work? Don't mess with me. Build a replacement house right now, Kendall yelled, grabbing my husband by the shoulders and shaking him violently. My husband's head bobbed back and forth limply, and I worried it might fall off at any moment. Even though we were planning to demolish the house, we would still be living here for a while, so it would be troublesome if my husband's head fell off. You can't live here anymore, so please leave, I said firmly, ushering my husband and his mistress out of the house as they continued to argue. Is someone here? Lizzie asked, entering the living room after hearing Kendall's shouting. I just sent away a persistent door-to-door salesman, I lied, pretending the events of the past few minutes had never happened. After that, my husband and I got divorced. As planned, Lizzie sold the house and entered a nursing home. Also, after hearing about the affair, my daughter said she would never see her former father again. It seems that my ex-husband and his mistress broke up after that. As a result, my ex-husband not only has to pay me alimony for the affair, but also child support for the child that will be born with his mistress. My ex-husband was cut off by me and our daughter, and he was abandoned by his mistress, leaving him alone. Although he is alone, my ex-husband has a job, so he can live comfortably with financial leeway from now on. Or so one might think. My ex-husband has to continue paying child support and Lizzie's nursing home fees. If Lizzie enters a nursing home with fees that are too high, he may not be able to pay child support. The child about to be born is not at fault. Therefore, I changed Lizzie's nursing home to one with slightly lower fees. However, I haven't forgotten that my ex-husband didn't take care of Lizzie at all when she developed dementia, and that he said things like, "Demented old hag, and I'll only have to endure her for a few years until she croaks." As a form of forced apology to Lizzie, I put my ex-husband in a nursing home with fees that would make his life barely manageable. As Lizzie's legal guardian, who can also sign contracts for nursing care services on her behalf, I won't allow him to change the nursing home on his own. If he wants to live with Lizzie, I would agree to cancel the nursing home contract. However, that's only if he can take care of Lizzie while working. That would be difficult, so I want him to continue working hard for Lizzie and his soon-to-be-born child while living alone. Even after the divorce, I sometimes visit Lizzie at the nursing home with my daughter. Adele, Anita, you came to see me. Thank you, I'm so happy. Lizzie calls out to us in a loud voice when she spots us, hurrying towards us. Perhaps because the nursing home provides a comfortable environment, Lizzie seems to have become a little more energetic. At this rate, she will likely remain healthy for quite some time. According to the nursing home staff, Lizzie remembers me and our daughter, but when her son, my ex-husband, visits, she mistakes him for someone she's meeting for the first time. Having been forgotten even by his mother, my ex-husband has truly become alone. I also started living alone after the divorce, but my situation is different from my ex-husband's. I can still visit Lizzie and talk with her like before, and I can meet my daughter. I also have a job, so I'm not struggling financially. Although I'm living alone, my life is fulfilling. Go get your welfare from TANF, you poor thing. With those words, the two of them left the house. I felt drained and just sat down right there. I remembered what my husband Mike had said earlier. You are definitely independent, but I've always felt like my pride as a man was being hurt. I want to build a future with your sister Nancy now. So, I want a divorce. It all seemed meaningless, and I signed the divorce papers to express my intention to divorce. Some time later, I had a meeting with both of them, with a lawyer present, to discuss the compensation I demanded. Shamelessly, my sister Nancy, who was not involved, demanded a share of the assets. But then, the lawyer burst out laughing. Isn't TANF for you? He said. What? Taken aback by the sudden turn of events, she was also surprised and exclaimed. Immediately after, seeing the documents the lawyer had placed on the table, Nancy turned pale. My name is Sally. Mike and I have been married for 18 years. I am 45 years old, and he is 3 years younger, at 42. We have one daughter, Lisa, who is currently 17 years old and in the 10th grade. She is approaching an important period with her exams next year. We met through work. I worked at a real estate company, and Mike worked at a related company. We hit it off over something minor and started going out in our private time. He is very sensitive and often struggles to make decisions. Back then, I found his indecisiveness cute and was attracted to him. I wanted to take care of him. Purely out of affection. That was also because I have a much younger brother. At first, I saw him as a brother and took care of him, but gradually, I was drawn to his more masculine aspects. That led to serious dating and eventually marriage. Mike was always indecisive, but he was the one who confessed and proposed to me. In those moments that required a decision, he always stepped up. That's why I felt I could marry him and be okay. And we did, going on to have Lisa and never experiencing a serious fight or a crisis of divorce. Once Lisa grew up, I thought we would start our second life as a couple. That's what I had believed. Sally, can I just stay here for a bit? My sister Nancy said this as she showed up unannounced with a huge suitcase. I have a brother and a sister. The woman standing in front of me was my sister, Nancy. Perhaps because of the age difference, I got along well with my brother. But I've always had a difficult relationship with her, who is a year older. Being shorter than Nancy, I always ended up with her hand-me-downs. Feeling sorry for me, when my parents bought me a new toy. I want one too. Give me yours, Nancy would say, taking the new doll I received and giving me her old, worn-out doll in return. Her bullying didn't stop there. Taking things was the lesser evil. Once we were in elementary school, she took all my friends, and when I got my first boyfriend in high school, she seduced him away from me. I hated her so much that I chose a different college just to avoid her, but she still interfered, ruining what should have been a fun college life. I still hate her to this day. I'd prefer not to have anything to do with her. So, I studied hard, got my real estate certification, and lived a life where I wouldn't have to see Nancy. Mike and I decided to have a small wedding, just the two of us, a photo wedding. My parents knew Nancy's character, so they kept my marriage a secret, yet here she was. I had hoped that once Lisa went to college, Mike and I would finally have some time for ourselves. Sally, you live in such a nice house. Is it a single-family home? Did you buy it? Oh, there's a room available here. I'll use this one. Nancy's irritating voice brought me back to reality. Hey, this is a problem. What do you mean by showing up unannounced? My husband and daughter live here too, you can't just move in. Ignoring my words, she began to inspect the house. Today was a holiday, but Lisa was out for a course. And Mike had been out since the morning for work. Could you please leave before they come back? I pleaded multiple times, but she wouldn't listen. And finally, in the evening, the two of them came home. Who is this? To Mike, who looked puzzled, Nancy greeted him with a charm that belied her 46 years. Nice to meet you, I'm Nancy. Sally's sister. When did you get married without telling me? I had no idea because there was no greeting or report. I was just bored and went to visit our childhood home and found your wedding photo in Mom's room by accident. It's terrible, isn't it? Even though we're sisters. Mike knew I had a sister. So, perhaps realizing she was exactly as he had heard, he looked a bit troubled. But I didn't miss it. Mike, looking enchanted by the beautiful Nancy. And Lisa, too, had a confused look on her face when she came home. No wonder. An aunt she had never met suddenly showed up at our house. But she pushed forward with the idea of moving in. Actually, I was fired from my job, and it's been hard to come up with rent and living expenses, so I was wondering if I could stay for a little while. Maybe it's okay for a little bit? Eh? But no. Lisa is facing an important time with her exams next year. I tried to say this, but the two of them didn't listen to my words and got excited on their own. Actually, I had heard about you from Sally. Oh, that's fine. You were probably just going along with Sally avoiding me, right? Sorry for being such a sister. From here, a tumultuous daily life begins. Nancy doesn't do any housework but keeps asking for money, and eventually starts taking cash from my wallet. This happened within just 1 week of she moving in to live with us. I've warned her about this several times, but she wouldn't listen. Hey, if you want money, at least tell me what you're buying or why you need it. Don't just take it from my wallet. Why do I have to report to you what I'm buying? Because it's my money. I wish she would start job hunting and move out soon since she was fired. But it doesn't seem like she's looking for a job, and lately, Mike and Nancy seem to have the same times of absence. Mike said he was working overtime, but there was never any overtime pay included in his salary. When I complained about it, the salary isn't supposed to include overtime, is it? You have to get paid for the overtime separately. If you can't say it, shall I say it for you? Huh? Are you doubting me? The overtime is paid separately, so there's no problem. Mike, who was usually gentle and rarely raised his voice, shouted. This was a shock in itself. Because he was not someone who would argue emotionally or suddenly start yelling. From this point on, I started to feel a crisis in our current life. As usual, Nancy only lazed around at home, costing more money than what we spend on our daughter Lisa, which only made me sigh. I consulted my parents about this. They apologized for their lack of oversight, which led Nancy to find out about my marriage and our current home. But the fault wasn't with my parents. I had moved away from my dear parents to live quietly with Mike and Lisa, yet Nancy clung to me, even going so far as to find out where we lived. She must have been preparing to find out where we lived the moment she found the wedding photo of Mike and me. Surely, she must be planning to take something from me again and make me unhappy. I've even started to doubt whether she was really fired from her job. Maybe she quit her job on purpose to freeload off me and ruin my life. That's what it's starting to feel like. If that's the case, I need to kick her out of the house as soon as possible. You say you were fired, but can't you get unemployment benefits? Well, I've always been part-time, so I'm really struggling. I could have gone back to my parents, but I can't expect my elderly parents to take care of me, right? So, as the independent Sally, it's your responsibility as a sister. That's just common sense. Faced with such nonsensical remarks, I was at a loss for words. Nancy, after dropping out of college, has been working part-time ever since and has never worked as a full-time employee. After being confronted with the fact, I realized job hunting wasn't going well for a reason. 3 months after Nancy started freeloading, I finally caught them cheating. I had been suspicious for a while, but seeing it was true was another thing. One day, when a client meeting was canceled and I was killing time at a cafe, I saw Nancy and Mike walking together outside. They were holding hands and chatting happily. A brother and his sister-in-law holding hands like that just isn't something that happens. In that moment, I was sure they were cheating. Sometime later, once my feelings had settled, I confronted them at home. So, the overtime was a lie, huh? Nancy, you've just been pretending to job hunt while hanging out with Mike. The worst. Even at this age, you can't be satisfied without taking something from me? That's why I kept my marriage to Mike a secret. When I let my emotions burst and poured out my feelings, they easily admitted to the affair. Then they started saying things that were even more infuriating. If I had known such a beautiful woman was my sister-in-law, I wouldn't have believed Sally and avoided you. You're definitely independent, but I've always felt like my pride as a man was being hurt. I want to build a future with Nancy now. So, let's get a divorce. He shoved divorce papers already filled out in his part at me. Fine. At this point, reconciliation is absolutely impossible. Nancy, Mike, from now on, I won't be taking care of you financially, so just be prepared for that. I declared, and Nancy burst into laughter, saying something outrageous. Go get your welfare from TNF, you poor thing. What? What are they even talking about? As I was wondering, a smirking Mike started saying something even more appalling. Yeah, that's right. Since custody usually favors the mother, right? I think it's better for Sally, as the mother, to be with our daughter. The rest is up to you. With those words, the two of them left the house. Some 10 minutes later, Lisa came home and was puzzled by the quietness of the house. So, I honestly told her that we were getting a divorce. Lisa was shocked at first, but seemed to accept the situation somewhat relieved after a while. Eventually, the divorce was finalized. I decided to have a discussion with both of them, accompanied by a lawyer I hired to claim compensation. Shamelessly, Nancy demanded a division of assets. But then, the lawyer burst out laughing. Isn't TANF for you? He said. What? Taken aback by the sudden turn of events, Nancy was also surprised and exclaimed. Immediately after, Nancy turned pale when she saw the documents the lawyer had placed on the table. "There's no money for a division of assets with this couple," the lawyer said, looking shocked between Mike and me. Of course, Mike was also surprised, being told there was hardly any assets left. Anticipating this, I had taken action as soon as I caught Mike and Nancy cheating. Therefore, the cash we had between us was only $10,000. For a couple that had been married for 18 years, that amount is unbelievably low. "Hey, what's this about? We had lots of savings, didn't we?" Mike, completely clueless about what was happening, asked in panic. Seeing him like that, anger welled up in me. "You really have no interest in Lisa, do you? I told you, didn't I? The savings I've accumulated so far were for education, and I was thinking of transferring them to her account. You said, do whatever you want. So, I transferred all my savings to her account. Almost all my savings were for education. You should know that better than anyone. She's managing her money herself, and even paid gift tax, so it's no longer our savings," I said with a cold expression, and Mike's face turned pale as he remembered the conversation. "So, what's the breakdown of the $10,000? I think about 80% of it is your secret stash." When I said that, Mike looked at me with a face that seemed to ask how I knew. "So, you knew about it, that's why you transferred your savings to Lisa, anticipating the division of assets? You agreed to it. Look, you even signed the consent form yourself." Mike then became angry. "I thought it was strange. Why would you ask for my agreement just for that?" Mike said, ruffling his head, clearly regretting his decision, but since he had signed it himself, there was no turning back now. Even after consulting with a lawyer, it was explained that since Mike had agreed and made the gift to Lisa, the money was no longer considered marital savings. I didn't want such people to get the money I had been saving for Lisa. That's when I thought of making a living donation. Hearing this, Nancy looked stunned but managed to say to Mike, "Hey, you said we had plenty of savings. Weren't we supposed to live a luxurious life? Dividing $10,000 isn't going to amount to much. Why didn't you realize her intentions sooner?" She blamed Mike, but he just looked away and remained silent. He had a small salary and was burdened with a substantial amount of student loans, so for a while after getting married, he hardly contributed to the living expenses. But that was agreed upon. When Mike said it was difficult for him to contribute to the living expenses, I said, "Understood. I'll take care of all the living expenses. So could you focus on saving as much as possible for our future?" So, for over a decade since I took over all the living expenses, I thought Mike had been able to save at least $100,000 or more, but in reality, it was only about $10,000. I had thought saving would be easy since he didn't have to pay for living expenses, but he was splurging behind my back. I found out the savings amount when I saw Mike's banking app and felt betrayed, though I hoped maybe he had saved properly in another account. But that hope was also betrayed, and since I had divorced him, it didn't matter anymore. Nancy, finally understanding the severity of the situation, was in despair, her body trembling slightly. She seemed to be trying hard to think of what to do next, but apparently came up with nothing. Knowing that the cash available for division was only $10,000, I decided to tell Nancy another truth. I turned my gaze towards Mike and said, "I debated whether to say this, but Mike, aren't you planning to quit your job?" Suddenly, Mike, who had been avoiding my gaze, looked at me. Mike, visibly rattled, shifted his eyes left and right before exclaiming, "How do you know I'm planning to quit my job? I had only discussed it with the boss. I thought so after seeing the paycheck." What I pointed out was the fact that no overtime was paid, but I was actually puzzled by another item. The paid leave. Mike, who had quit a job in real estate to work for a construction company, had never taken more than 5 days of paid leave. Yet, recently, his pay slips showed that he had used up his paid leave in a lump sum. Taking a bunch of paid leave at once suggests quitting. Since then, I had been suspicious of their affair and thought maybe Mike planned to quit his job after divorcing me, thinking he would get a substantial amount of assets. That he would actually go through with such an overly optimistic plan made me sigh. You were my husband at one point. You should know what kind of work I do and how much wealth I've built up. To rely on that for an affair and to choose to quit is really short-sighted. As I said this, Mike's face turned red. The lawyer's mention of TANF to Nancy meant, in essence, that if both of them were unemployed, that's where they'd end up without jobs. Faced with another fact, Nancy was panicked but soon shouted as if she had realized something. Wait. If you can prepare for Lisa's college tuition and cover living expenses by yourself, there must be something fishy. I got it. You're hiding assets, aren't you? That's it. Come on, confess already. Hearing Nancy's words, Mike also seemed to have a realization. That's right. Nancy, actually, Sally owns a lot of real estate, so we have to divide that as property. That was close, nearly got trapped. Real estate is a significant asset, so we need to split it evenly. You've been acting all high and mighty, but you're using underhanded tactics too. As I watched the two of them laughing, the lawyer finally couldn't help but laugh. The moment became tense. The lawyer cleared his throat and began to speak matter-of-factly. If you're going to talk about property division, you should study more. Mike, as the ex-husband, should know that Sally owns real estate as a business and is making a profit. A corporation and an individual are separate. Her company is her separate property and cannot be divided. Realizing the lawyer was correct, the two of them blushed and froze. The lawyer continued. Typical assets would include cars, houses, cash, and savings. Furthermore, Mike and Nancy have essentially admitted to the affair. So, Sally can claim compensation from you both. We'll claim $10,000 from Mike and $3,000 from Nancy. Their faces contorted at that. Isn't that too much? It was just a few months' affair. Right. Normally, it wouldn't cost $10,000, would it? They started making excuses. But I immediately countered. Oh, who decided that? Market rates are just that, rates. You took paid leave to date Nancy, and Nancy didn't seriously job hunt but played with my money. The lawyer objectively assessed these facts and came up with this amount. What, would you have preferred a higher amount? They quickly shook their heads. The discussion didn't conclude that day and was adjourned. However, I felt a firm sense of progress. 2 weeks later, we set up another meeting. Somehow Nancy had become defiant, saying, "Give me the house and the car. It's part of the property division. I'll give Mike's $10,000 and pay the remaining $1,000, okay?" Her ridiculous claim almost made me yell in anger, but I managed to control myself and calmly assessed the situation. The house still had a mortgage, and I had to maintain it every time something happened. So, it would have some value if sold. Even the car, bought new, is only 5 years old. Both still have value, yet accepting Nancy's argument would only result in my loss. That's the last thing I want. Nancy, did you do the math? If you included the money from selling the house and car, you couldn't possibly say that. Generally, such talks are for those who cheated, like Nancy, not for me to say. How presumptuous can one be? I thought so, but before I could continue, Mike, who was beside Nancy, started saying, Sally has assets worth $160 million at the company, right? I don't know if you're some real estate mogul or what, but being so greedy even with all those assets is just too much. I was taken aback for a moment, but their words and actions were so absurd that I burst into laughter. Given the situation, my sudden laughter made both of them freeze. After a good laugh, I became serious again. Is that all you wanted to say? And why are you playing the victim? Greedy? I'd rather be greedy than give money to a man who cheats and abandons his daughter and to the worst sister who steals her brother-in-law. It's better for me to secure as much as possible for Lisa. The two of them flinched. As the lawyer said in our last meeting, if you want to use legal terms, you better study more. What on earth made Nancy think she could say that? I planned to shatter their schemes bit by bit. Mike, the house is in my name, right? I know that, but we've lived together all this time. So what? I took out a mortgage and bought it before we were married. No matter what you do, it's my property. The car was bought new, has no accidents or violations. If you want to take it, pay me half the appraisal value. That's the rule for property division. I own 2 cars. One is the new car we're discussing, and the other is a used compact car. But the latter would hardly be worth anything. But the lawyer said, no, cars are part of the property division. Did Nancy just believe that without thinking? That's not what it meant. Look, the lawyer was only talking about the main things that could be part of the property division, not that they will be in this case. The only things we need to divide between us are the $10,000 combining Mike's secret savings and my savings, and the 2 cars. That's all. Nancy knew nothing. Of course, Mike hadn't thought it through either, and this oversight put them back in a pinch. He seemed to ponder for a while but eventually became clueless and pleaded with me. Please, just give us enough money to start a new life. I beg you. But he didn't seem remorseful. It just seemed like a plea to solve the immediate problem. Such shallow words are worthless to me. I answered with a heart of stone. It seems like you wouldn't want to pay Lisa's child support anyway, so there's no room for compromise. Why should I worry about your living expenses? Saying this clearly, the two of them signed the documents, realizing that nothing they said would make me agree. After the divorce and property division were settled, Nancy kept calling me persistently. Hey! Why did Mike have so much debt? You were paying for the living expenses, right? Then what's the point of the debt? What's going on here? She was screaming on the other side of the phone. I told her the plain facts while holding back a sigh. Isn't it obvious by now? The fact that after over a decade, there was only about $1,000 in savings when it came out. Does having debt while having savings mean you took out a card loan for some big purchase or something? When I asked incredulously, Nancy earnestly explained the situation to the point of drawing back. Yes. He took out a $1,000 loan just to buy some nonsensical branded goods. And then the credit card payments turned out to be a huge mess because it was set to revolving payments without us knowing. This man, he's not just a problem debtor. How dare you push such a person onto me? Weren't you the one who stole him, Nancy? I retorted with a half-smile, and Nancy fell silent. Mike had incurred debts without even me knowing. Now, after the fact, several dunning letters have arrived. He must have hidden them while with me, but became careless after changing addresses. Or perhaps, typical of Mike, he got caught up in his new life and forgot to hide them. Just figure it out yourselves, I said and hung up. Eventually, Mike called, complaining about the high taxes for the car he took and not expecting the vehicle registration renewal fees to be so high, stating the obvious. Maintaining a car costs this much, huh? It's tough, so can't you take it back? I refuse. I curtly declined, and he hung up, seemingly dejected. After that, he reached out through messages asking for help, but I warned. If you keep pestering me like this, I'll report you to the police for stalking. And then he stopped coming altogether. What lies ahead for them is probably a hell much worse than hell itself. Later on, it seems Mike and Nancy got divorced. Their marriage lasted only 3 months after divorcing me. Their plans must have been thrown into disarray the moment it was clear that the single-family home, in my name, was not subject to division. Starting a marriage while burdened with debt and compensation payments was never going to work. Their divorce proceedings were apparently even more contentious than with me. Nancy is someone who clings to money. Sell the new car. It's a waste to keep something like this. It'd be better to cash it in, right? I don't care about that money. Besides, I paid the compensation in full, so if we're divorcing, you need to pay me back. They were stuck in such trivial arguments, unable to divorce for a while. Eventually, they did divorce, but Mike chose to file for bankruptcy. Since the compensation was paid in full and recovered, it didn't affect me. However, he ended up unemployed, devoid of assets, and ultimately fell into homelessness. He couldn't take back quitting his job and left the company. His useless pride prevented him from applying for TANF. Now, he's likely living a miserable life, doing something akin to begging. Divine retribution caught up with Nancy. After stealing my husband and cheating, her 3-month marriage became widely known, and her social relationships collapsed. Naturally, she was disowned by her family and relatives. No company would want to hire someone like her, so her job search continues to be difficult. She might get hired as a part-timer, but with a terrible attitude of blaming others and not herself, she's quickly fired. The lawyer's words that TANF is for you became a reality, and now Nancy is desperately trying to receive TANF. But because she continues to hold on to anything that might be worth money, she hasn't been able to receive TANF and was evicted from her apartment, ending up like Mike. Trampling not only on my feelings but also on Lisa's, such punishment is only natural. Now, it's just the two of us living, but our days haven't changed much. Mike, who never did anything for Lisa yet always complained, telling her to study or go to a good university, is gone, and Lisa says she feels refreshed. And impressively, she was accepted into a national university. Seeing Lisa about to become a college student this fall, I am once again moved. Work keeps me very busy in a good way, and though I'm nearly 46, I'm still in good health. I think to myself that I must keep working harder. This time, give the baby to your brother. You can just have another one. After I announced my pregnancy to my parents, my mother uttered those unbelievable words. Brother Zach and his wife Rosie, who is infertile, demanded that I give up my child for adoption to them. My parents have always prioritized Zach over everything and neglected me. The hopeful future I had envisioned upon conceiving my first child turned into despair. My name is Olivia. I've been married to my husband Walt for 3 years. Our marriage is great, and we've been talking like we want a child soon. However, I've kept some distance from my family home. The reason lies with my parents and my brother Zach. At the family home, my parents, Zach, and his wife Rosie live together. Zach was a prodigy since childhood and graduated from a prestigious university. He now secured a job at a major corporation. He is set to join and eventually take over our father's company. Our parents have adored him since he was young. In comparison, I wasn't very smart and had average looks, so I don't have many memories of being cherished by our parents. From a young age, I was always confused by the difference in treatment between Zach and me, often feeling down alone. Especially our mother, she was always with him, clearly showing he was her favorite. As for me, she mostly ignored me. When she did talk, it was usually to put me down. Perhaps influenced by our parents, Zach looked down on me too, so we never had a good sibling relationship. I felt I had no place at home and grew increasingly isolated. For those reasons, as soon as I graduated high school, I left home. My parents, seemingly uninterested in me, didn't say much when I announced my departure. In fact, they seemed almost pleased. After leaving, I got a job. And 3 years later, I married Walt, who was a classmate from high school. I was eager to build my own family and find my peace, away from the influence of my family. I only return home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'd rather not go, but my parents insist. They worry about appearances, and a daughter who never visits would look bad. They make a fuss if I don't go, so I endure it and visit twice a year. I went back grudgingly this Thanksgiving, but my mother was as cold as ever. You and your husband are still so unimpressive. It ruins the festive mood. She started with her sarcasm right away. She called us back only to say such things. If she's going to be like this, she shouldn't bother calling. I thought, while fending off her sarcasm, but her barbs continued. We're worried about you. You two live in poverty. We always think you'll come begging for money. My family home is quite wealthy. But since leaving, I've never asked for financial help and have been living off our own earnings with Walt. We manage a decent life and even celebrate their birthdays properly. There's no way we would do that. I immediately responded to her baseless accusation. However, she blurted out, "But you two are still low income, aren't you?" And then shifted her gaze to Walt beside me. Walt, you're still working at that detective agency, right? How long do you plan to keep doing that shady business? Don't you feel embarrassed? Indeed, Walt works as a detective, something she always ridicules. She sees detective work as shady and inferior to regular jobs. While Walt was explaining his job to make it understandable for her, Zach chimed in. Mom, it's pointless to even listen to that. Detective work is shady, something nobody wants to get involved in. It's a low-level job done by people beneath us. The salary must be nothing compared to mine. Flaunting his elitism, Zach looked down on detective work, just like her. That is something we've been hearing since we got married. Walt remained silent, but I felt angry that his job was being completely dismissed. Walt has been my confidant since our student days, so he understands what my family is like. Therefore, he always accompanies me when we have to visit my parents, not wanting to leave me alone. Even though he knows he'll be subjected to unpleasantness, I still feel terribly guilty. This visit, like others, ended up being an unpleasant experience. We resolved to live modestly together, not bothered by my family. Around that time, something wonderful happened. In our 3rd year of marriage, I finally became pregnant. I was overjoyed to be expecting our first child. Considering the way my parents always disparaged me, I felt I couldn't keep my pregnancy a secret from them. So, I visited my family home to announce it. It had been a while since I visited outside of Thanksgiving and Christmas, and my parents, Zach, and his wife Rosie were there. The response to my announcement was unexpected. Upon hearing my news, my mother suddenly raised her voice. How dare you say such a thing in front of Zach? I was surprised by her reaction. I hadn't expected congratulations, but this was unexpected. I was puzzled by her reference to Zach, and as I tilted my head in confusion, she revealed a shocking truth. Zach can't have children, due to Rosie's constitution. How could you be so insensitive with your announcement? I had no idea that they were infertile. Stunned by her unexpected words, I turned to look at the two. Zach looked uncomfortable and resigned. Meanwhile, Rosie was looking down solemnly. You dare have a child before Zach. If it weren't for Rosie, this wouldn't have happened. She sighed dramatically, glancing back and forth between Rosie and me. Observing that, Zach intervened. You know, Rosie feels guilty enough as it is. Don't be too hard on her, Mom. I was a bit surprised to hear he defend Rosie. From my occasional visits, I knew that his attitude towards Rosie was never that kind. You're really kind, Zach. Rosie, if it weren't for being Zach's wife, you'd have been divorced long ago. Hearing Zach's words, our mother glared at Rosie. Indeed, knowing them, they might have divorced Rosie immediately upon learning of her infertility. But perhaps Zach does have some affection for his wife. I pondered that as I watched he calm our mother down. Well, I've made my announcement, so I'll be heading home. The atmosphere had turned to blaming Rosie because of my announcement, so I decided to leave quickly. But then, my mother turned to me and said something unbelievable. The baby you're having, give it to Zach. What? I couldn't help but exclaim in shock at her outrageous suggestion. What does she mean, give my baby to Zach? You can have another child since you're capable of having one. Since Rosie seems unable to. So giving that baby to Zach as an adopted child will bring peace to our family. Peace? What is she talking about? How could they think of taking my baby for him, just because he can't have children? That's absurd and unjustifiable. When I insisted I would never agree to such a thing, my mother retorted, Look, this is our long-awaited first grandchild. I'll let it grow around me. It's only right that we get to raise it. Zach will take over the company, so we will raise the baby. She made such infuriating arguments, planning to take away my unborn child just to ensure a successor for our father's company. She talked about the process of adoption as if she had researched it, but I was too furious to listen. Seeing how irritated I was, Zach added something unbelievable. Well, since Rosie can't have children, it's good for her that you got pregnant at this time. At least you're finally contributing to this family. I couldn't believe it, but Zach seemed to agree with her. Even our father, who usually says nothing, nodded in agreement from behind them. It seemed the whole family was ready to claim my baby as their own. I couldn't believe how casually Zach spoke such terrible words to his own wife, acting as if nothing was wrong. Realizing that talking further was pointless, I decided to leave immediately. They only said, Make sure to give us an answer next time you come. And didn't even come out to see me off. Only Rosie, who must have been deeply hurt, silently saw me off. Even after returning home, my anger didn't subside. Far from celebrating my pregnancy, they made an unreasonable and absurd demand. Thinking about the future made me feel gloomy. They would probably keep pushing for adoption after the baby was born. Walt was also shocked when he heard the story from me after returning from work. Even he was at a loss for words. He understands my family, but the situation being beyond belief. A few days later, we had an unexpected visitor at home. What brings you here so suddenly? It's rare to see you alone. It was Rosie. She looked haggard, her skin lacked luster, and her hair was disheveled. As she looked at us, her eyes brimmed with tears. Olivia, I'm so sorry about the other day. She must be referring to when I went to announce my pregnancy. It wasn't her fault though. She seemed to feel guilty about the unreasonable demands made by my family. Then, she began to speak about something unexpected. Actually, I have something I want to talk to you about. What could it be? I invited her in to hear her out. What she revealed was shocking, and my anger surged again. Trying hard to suppress her anger, she calmly told me a significant truth. Walt had been quietly listening to our conversation, but spoke up as our talk wound down, saying, Actually, and revealed information to me. It was as astonishing and infuriating as Rosie's confession. Although Rosie had been listening to Walt's story, her teared up again. Having been informed of this significant fact by Walt and Rosie, I made a decision. To punish my parents and Zach. I swore to myself to settle past grievances and seek revenge. 3 months later, my belly beginning to show, I visited my family home with Walt. There were my parents, Zach, and Rosie. You've decided to give the baby to Zach, right? My mother asked, without even a greeting. It seemed she could only think of my baby being adopted by Zach. I told you before, that's not going to happen. As I responded, my parents glared at me, as if they couldn't accept it. No matter what you say, we're taking that baby. Stop being so stubborn. My mother appeared infuriated by my resistance. Feeling the same way, Zach and my father just glared at me without stopping her. No matter how much you yell, I will never give the baby away. Instead, I came today to show something to you guys. Is that okay, Rosie? I said, then made eye contact with Rosie. She nodded, still looking into my eyes. Rosie intends to divorce Zach. And the reason is this. I pulled several photos from an envelope I had brought. That was my purpose for coming today. These are... Seeing the photos, Zach was speechless. The photos showed Zach kissing another woman and entering a hotel, undeniable evidence of his infidelity. Apparently shocked to have been photographed. He muttered just one sentence. Who the hell took these photos? Our parents, standing next to Zach, looked bewildered and alternated their gaze between him and me. They probably had no idea that he was having an affair. It was Walt who took these. What? Yes, Walt had taken the photos. Walt had been silently watching that unfold, but began to explain how he came to take the photos. As a detective, he had incidentally seen Zach walking in downtown with an unknown woman while investigating a case. Out of curiosity, he conducted his own investigation and discovered that Zach was having an affair with that woman by pretending to be single. The decisive moment was captured in those photos. Zach seemed to think he had cleverly kept his affair secret. He was dumbfounded and at a loss for words. Adultery is a valid reason for divorce. Make sure you pay Rosie a proper compensation. Amidst the tense atmosphere, Zach spoke. I got stuck with a wife who's so incompetent. It's okay to have a little fun outside, right? Rosie and I were speechless. Instead of apologizing, he blamed Rosie for his infidelity. That's right, you're right. Rosie, it's because you're incompetent. To think you're acting all high and mighty about divorce. Our mother joined in, supporting his retort. They were desperately trying to blame Rosie, probably not wanting to be at a disadvantage themselves. I guess after I left, she must have been treated coldly by this family, just like I was. Thinking about it made me feel terribly sorry for her. Therefore, I decided to confront this family today. To save myself and Rosie, who had been neglected all that time, I pushed them further into a corner by blaming Rosie. Zach, you made fun of Walt, but the investigative skills of a professional detective are extraordinary. As soon as he started investigating, evidence kept piling up. And then, we found out something shocking about your mistress. Saying that, I saw my parents tensing up, wondering what shocking fact would come out next. The woman you're having an affair with seems to be the daughter of a mafia boss. As soon as I revealed it, Zach stiffened as if frozen. He must not have known that. Immediately, my mother screamed. What? Is that true? Her beloved son's mistress being the daughter of a mafia boss. Upon knowing the full extent of the shocking truth, she collapsed to the ground, covering her face with both hands. My father also pressed his head with both hands, as if he had heard something terrifying. Zach, you were pretending to be single while dating her, correct? Right, he had hidden his marital status to have an affair with the woman. If she finds out that she's been deceived by a married man, what do you think will happen? What will her parents do when they learn their daughter was tricked by a married man? It would be better to tell them, right? With my threatening words, now clearly realizing the identity of the woman he had been deceiving, Zach started to panic. No! I didn't know either. I was deceived too. Our parents, domineering just a moment ago, were now completely confused by this unforeseen revelation. Then, Rosie began to speak in front of the flustered. You didn't just deceive your mistress, did you? With her words, tension returned to the room. Then, she repeated what she had told me during her visit. You are infertile, aren't you? At that moment, Zach's face showed an oh no expression. Our parents looked at him in shock. They had blamed Rosie for not being able to have a baby, but the cause was actually Zach himself. Did you know, Rosie? That was all he could manage to say. The stunned parents were visibly shaken by the harsh impact. As they struggled to find their next words, Rosie delivered the final blow. I found it accidentally while cleaning the room. Rosie had stumbled upon his infertility diagnosis, hidden in his desk drawer. He couldn't admit that to his doting parents, so he kept that fact a secret and blamed infertility on Rosie. Believing his words, our parents had blamed Rosie. His protective comments about Rosie when I announced my pregnancy were probably due to his guilt over the issue. Being blamed for not being able to have a baby, I suffered every day. And the talk turned to taking Olivia's child. I was just so sad. Rosie declared that with a calm and unchanged expression. In contrast, my parents had just learned the shocking truth and were in a panic. To think Zach will never have a baby, that's just... My mother was despairing at the reality of not being able to hold his child. But in the next moment, she turned her hysterical hatred towards him. You knew it was your fault, yet you pushed all the blame onto your wife. Did you cheat with other women just because you knew you were infertile? How could my son be so low? Oh dear, why did this happen? She vented her frustration at him. Hearing it, he finally spoke and started his pitiful explanation. I was shocked to find out I was infertile. I felt guilty for not giving you two a grandchild. When I found out Olivia was pregnant with a boy, it just seemed convenient. It was a story that made me feel utterly contemptuous. Shaking off my anger, I delivered the final blow to the three. Your selfish actions hurt Rosie and me. Besides, you have an affair with such a dangerous person. Zach, Mom, and Dad, you all better brace yourselves for what's coming. You guys have hurt so many people, now you'll get what you deserve. Hearing my words, they started apologizing to us, their earlier bravado gone. Where did the momentum go when you asked me to give up my son? I looked at the three of them with disdain, like looking at trash. Beside me, Rosie said nothing and just stared ahead. Her silence spoke volumes about the depth of her sorrow. Zach and my parents were in for tough times ahead. The father of Zach's mistress learned about the affair, and the three of them were summoned and had to apologize repeatedly. Although they managed to break off the affair, Zach was forced to pay a hefty compensation because he had deceived the woman. The amount was staggering, and they learned the hard way the dangers of entanglement with such people. Because of that, my family home soon fell into disarray. My father was forced to resign as company president due to the public scandal. My mother became isolated, seen with disdain by the neighbors, and withdrew into herself. The relationship between my parents became hostile, constantly arguing over Zach. Zach was forced to leave his job after the scandal leaked to his company. As if to add insult to injury, his divorce with Rosie was finalized. Losing his job and having to pay compensation to Rosie, Zach was trapped in a life of relentless work. Around the time Rosie successfully left the family home, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Both the baby and I were in good health, and I savored the joy of welcoming a new life. The happy days for our family of three began. Then, Walt and I decided to cut all ties with my family. I had been torn about severing ties with such parents and brother, but that incident made me realize it was best for my son. Even without them, I have an irreplaceable family now. I've decided to cherish only my precious family from now on. Oh, you're the famous photographer. Are you here for a shoot today? The woman in front of me stared at me excitedly. She, whom I met at the beach during clamming season, seemed to know I was a photographer. Despite being busy playing in the sand with her family of three, she listened to my story with great interest. It's deeply moving to recall my early days as a photographer, when I struggled to gain credibility and couldn't get any assignments. When I told her I was here for a shoot, she eagerly volunteered to be my subject. But could you please make sure not to show my child's face? She said this, pointing to a cute little girl. The girl, about 2 or 3 years old, looked at us with wide, round eyes. Of course. What about you? As I asked, the father looked pale and darted his eyes around, repeating vague responses. It's understandable, I guess. After all, the father building a sandcastle with the girl is my husband. My name is Sophia. A 30-year-old freelance photographer. Most of my work involves school events and weddings in the area. I capture moments brimming with smiles and friendship, sharing them through my photos. It's not just about taking pictures, but about capturing people's memories and emotions, sharing happiness. Capturing these joyful moments of people is my job and my passion. But my life's shutter stopped in an instant due to an unforeseen event. My husband, Oliver, was a busy businessman. Involved in developing leisure facilities and tourist spots, he traveled all over the country. Though we rarely had time together, the moments we shared were special. Even the briefest times with him, his smiles were what kept me going. I never intended to quit my photography. We promised to support each other, build our careers, and got married. I took the opportunity to work style from traveling around the countries to work from home. Starting with posting landscape and permitted portraits on social media. As virtual galleries and online exhibitions expanded my reach, not just among publishers and peers but also among a general audience, my followers rapidly increased. On social media, where I could do live streams, I began to earn from talking shows and explanations about my photographs. It was fulfilling and enjoyable that I told the backgrounds or discussed techniques sharing my photos. Steadily growing my followers, I balanced outdoor shoots with social media promotions. Oliver was still constantly on business trips. I inevitably spent more time with my in-laws, James and Emma, who showed interest in my social media activities. Teaching them how to use smartphones and social media, we grew closer, and they often tuned into my photos and live streams. Both are wonderful people who ensure my fulfilling days. The company kept me from feeling lonely while my husband was away. However, there was a significant void in our lives. We couldn't have children. Despite numerous tests, it just wasn't happening. As we both wanted kids, we were upset because we just couldn't seem to have a baby for years. And it started affecting us. Oliver, who once supportive, grew tired of the financial strain and frequent hospital visits, and became increasingly discouraged about infertility treatment. At that time, his project enters the climax, so he stays away from home for days, traveling around the countries. It was clear that his focus shifted from our childlessness to his challenging work. His concern for my inability to conceive diminished, replaced by work talks. I felt lonely but tried to understand his busyness. Yet, no matter how understanding, we weren't emotionally close. Yesterday, I had a meeting with a client, and it looks like a new project is starting. I'll probably be away for a while starting next week. He said this, taking shirts and other laundry from his large suitcase. I had just gotten back home, but still, I hurried to start the washing machine for them. Oliver, when he runs out of clean clothes, rather than doing laundry or sending them for cleaning, he just buys new shirts. He says it's faster and foolproof, but I prefer to save where we can. So, what about the hospital? That's impossible. I have to go too, right? I can't take off work, and next week is a no-go for me. I sighed softly, making sure my husband couldn't hear. I had made a hospital appointment, but there's nothing I can do if he's out on a business trip. It would be inconvenient for his company, and I was happy that his hard work was being recognized. I didn't want to be a nuisance. Well, but I'm busy too, and it's tough. You also out working on a shoot, right? Let's both keep up the hard work. Yeah. Take care of yourself too, Oliver. I was dismissed so easily, yet I didn't speak my mind. Maybe he doesn't want kids anymore. But I'm too scared to ask if that's really the case. Should I just accept it quietly, or should I bring it up, even if it's roundabout? I'm torn. I'm good at capturing people's joy and sorrow through my camera. But now, I'm just going through the days, not even aware of my own feelings. I feel like I'm getting trapped inside the frames of my photos. Then, one day, a well-textured white envelope arrived at our house, with a logo of a famous resort company on it. It didn't seem like just another piece of direct mail, so I hurriedly opened it. Inside was a voucher for a stay at a luxury hotel by the sea. And it appeared to be for 3 people. Why was this sent to us? With a sense of foreboding, I quickly went to my husband. Oliver, this came in the mail. Do you know anything about it? Of course, I wasn't accusing him from the start. I made sure to ask in a way that didn't sound confrontational, just casual. He stopped reading his newspaper and looked at me. His expression was blank, but his eyes narrowed slightly, almost glaring. I'd never been looked at like that before, and I couldn't hide the chill in my heart. Oh, that. A colleague couldn't make it, so it was booked in my name. It's nothing weird, so give it back. He reached for it. Without saying a word, I handed over the envelope and tickets. Oliver snatched them from me. But when he saw the name on it, he looked back at me, clearly annoyed this time. This is addressed to me, right? Don't open my mail without asking. I was taken aback and quickly apologized. But with my husband in sales, various DMs arrive. I've been disposing of the ones that come home without much thought, so I was surprised at his reaction. I'm sorry. I didn't know if it was direct mail, just wanted to check. I'm here today, you could have just asked me. He took the envelope to his room, and I couldn't ask any more about the tickets. I wasn't fully convinced why he had to book tickets for his colleague, but I had no choice but to accept his explanation. But then, not even half a month later, something else happened. It was May, approaching our wedding anniversary. We were supposed to gather at the in-laws' house, but he suddenly announced a long business trip. At first, I was speechless and confused. A business trip? On our wedding anniversary? In my job, I often get requests for family portraits or landscape photography. But I had plans, so I had taken the day off. Normally, a regular company, including Oliver's, would be off on Memorial Day. At least, his company should be closed as usual. He shrugged his shoulders lightly and forced a smile. It was a sudden decision, had to be done. I can't help but work through the holiday, so please go to the gathering for me. I know he's proud of his job and has been serious about his career since before we got married. But gradually, I find myself less convinced by his reasons for work and business trips in those casual moments. In the end, he just pulls along his favorite suitcase and leaves for work. Although they were angry at his attitude, because his call was so late that it was close to our wedding anniversary, they tried to make me comfortable. Sorry for making you free up your schedule in vain. I'll give Oliver a strict talking to next time I see him. Emma said that, but all I could do was give a wry smile. Originally, we were supposed to stay a few days after getting together. Oliver was the only child for them. I was told it would be sad if I left early, so I decided to stay a few days after our wedding anniversary as planned. I brought my camera and took pictures of them doing housework and everyday life, and scenes I usually don't focus on. I spent time thinking about shooting plans, but part of me felt the void of Oliver's absence. For work and a change of pace, I decided to visit the coast one station away. Around Memorial Day, the beach is busy with people clam digging and families enjoying their time. Some opened colorful beach umbrellas, enjoying walks and sunbathing. I walked along the beach with my camera around my neck. Suddenly, I stopped, noticing a family building a sandcastle. I paused at a familiar voice. I was glad I wasn't holding the camera in my hand. I thought that right in front of that scene, I wouldn't have been able to keep from dropping something. There was Oliver, with a young woman and a toddler, surrounding a sandcastle. They looked like a happy family, gathering white sand and shells. I couldn't believe my eyes. But then, the hotel tickets that arrived home, his frequent long business trips, his indifference. All came back to me. It would have been an ideal family scene for a photo shoot if it were a work assignment. But I couldn't believe my own husband was in it. The toddler, maybe 2 or 3 years old, seemed to match the time when I felt Oliver drifting away. He already had another family. Whether his real child or not, my intuition as a wife told me there was a blood connection. I felt like a glass frame in my heart was shattering. The photo inside that frame was supposed to be full of our happy smiles. I decided to speak up. Not to Oliver, but to the woman playing with the toddler. The woman, wearing a large straw hat, looked surprised as I suddenly spoke to her. I managed a smile and apologized for the abruptness. Then I pulled out my business card, explaining I'm a freelance photographer. My card only had my professional name, but also included my social media contact details. The woman looked interestedly at the card, then started searching for me on her mobile phone. Meanwhile, Oliver, fully aware of me, stared frozen at a point on the sand. Would you mind if I take a photo of your family? I sometimes do live streams showing photography tips. What? Sophia, I know you. I follow you. You post tips for mobile photography, right? She was excited, unaware of my situation, happy to be approached by a minor celebrity on social media. I was surprised she was a follower, but her enthusiasm seemed to extend to agreeing to a live stream as well. When I boldly invited her, she was all in before I could finish. Of course! Exclaimed, overjoyed. I felt guilty for deceiving, but my goal was to somehow document the other family Oliver had. Can you teach me some photography tricks for mothers? Oliver, you're okay with that, right? Oliver, caught off guard, was in a panic. I could tell he was desperately trying to avoid looking at me and thinking of an excuse. Maybe we shouldn't, show faces. I do model for brochures, Oh, could you make sure not to include the child? Later I learned that the other woman, Amelia, was a model he met through his company's PR work. Of course, I agreed, carefully adjusting the mobile phone camera to keep the child out of the frame. I set up for immediate streaming and started a live broadcast under the guise of teaching Mother Amelia. With the child out of the picture, Oliver, who was attending to her, became the center of the screen. His strange smile was interpreted positively by viewers, quickly spreading as him being cute but nervous. After the live stream, I thanked them and left. But it wasn't long before Oliver chased after me and stopped me. He had left Amelia and the child behind. I just asked him, "What are you thinking?" But he just stood there, sullenly silent. Probably, being with Amelia was awkward, so he ran to me. What did he intend by stopping me? Finally, he spoke. "Sophia, please understand." How can I understand without a proper explanation? Well, I can guess after seeing. But I had no choice. I had a child with her before we had one. It's fine. Amelia's family is wealthy, and she said she doesn't need to marry me. Oliver finally confessed the truth, defiantly. I couldn't believe a young woman who got pregnant would say something so convenient. Probably, she knew he was married. I wanted a child. But you couldn't have one. She is nice and honest, and the child is adorable, looks just like her. But that doesn't mean I've come to dislike you or hate living with you. His words were incoherent, leaving me at a loss. He seemed to argue for maintaining the status quo. I won't trouble you. This situation is perfect for me. Isn't this good enough? As if that's an excuse. I should have argued back. But I was so overwhelmed with pain, I lost my voice. My husband, seeing me silent, sighed as if he had convinced me, and was about to leave. But then, unexpectedly, two people arrived. It was James and Emma. Oliver! Who is that woman and child? James, red-faced, shouted. Oliver was shocked by the sudden appearance of his parents. What? Why? I saw it on the live stream notification. Who is this long business trip with? Skipping home visits, with an unknown woman, and even a child. Before James could stop her, Emma stepped between Oliver and me, protecting me, sharply addressing Oliver. I was also shocked. They had seen the live stream on social media and realized something terrible was happening. Shocked by the sight of Oliver appearing as a couple with an unknown woman, they rushed over. Confronted by his parents, he ended up confessing everything about his relationship with Amelia and their child. Such a disgrace to the family. He was struck by a strong slap from Emma, who was rendered speechless. James glared at him with an expression so terrifying that I thought he would have punched him if not for the slap. They left Oliver behind and took me to their car. Following their apologies and strong recommendation, I decided to divorce. After exposing Oliver and his affair with Amelia and securing compensation from them, things settled down for a while. However, as the divorce proceedings and investigations went on, various truths came to light. Firstly, Amelia truly knew Oliver was married. Given her willingness to have a child without marriage, it seemed she had prepared herself to some extent for a relationship with a married man. She had tried to keep the issue under wraps not just for money, but probably to keep Oliver around as long as possible. Upon realizing this, she became outraged and blocked all my social media accounts. Not only that, she started posting recklessly on various platforms, inadvertently revealing herself as the other woman, which only garnered sympathy for me. Her relationship with a married man caused trouble in her family home. Being driven out and nearly losing her home, she brazenly tried to live in my former in-laws' house. Naturally, they firmly refused to let her set foot on their property. Next, Oliver's secrets began to unravel. During the compensation claim investigation, numerous women and men connected to him came forward. It turned out he had repeated affairs during his business trips, with several partners over multiple occasions. Some of these affairs involved women who were engaged or married. I decided to send the data from the infamous live stream. A little investigation would reveal that I, the legitimate wife, was the streamer, and the people on camera were Oliver's mistress and their child. As a result, women who were deceived into thinking he was single and husbands whose wives were taken from them became angry and sued Oliver. He faced lawsuits from many people, including me, with no choice but to accept them all. As the truth about my husband continued to emerge, Amelia fled with her child. Probably fed up, she chose to escape from her relationship with him. The turmoil she caused on social media calmed down, and her accounts disappeared, so I decided to let her be. However, considering her nature of boasting about affairs on social media, it was unlikely she would just disappear. Sure enough, Amelia started posting under a completely different account. But her posts, portraying herself as a tragic heroine, were quickly identified and sparked outrage. Subsequently, she would delete her account when things got bad and create new ones, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Abandoned even by Amelia, Oliver apparently turned to his parents in the end, but their learning about his multiple affairs infuriated them further. Without any apology and only asking for help because he was in trouble, the parents-in-law decided to sever ties with their son. After the infidelity scandal, Oliver was burdened with a significant amount of compensation. As legal proceedings progressed, inquiries from mistresses and their husbands poured into his company, complicating the situation further. Worse still, this wasn't the worst outcome. His face being exposed on social media and the revelation of a child from an affair was an unprecedented scandal, especially since it happened during a business trip. The information spread quickly, and comments of shock and anger flooded related facilities and reviews associated with his company. The drop in trust due to the scandal spread both internally and externally, prompting the management to feel a sense of crisis and rush to devise strategies. However, not being familiar with crisis management, they were forced to hastily consult experts and develop communication strategies. Meanwhile, they instructed employees to provide accurate information, desperately trying to quell the confusion. The scandal led to numerous inquiries and criticisms from both inside and outside the company, rapidly tarnishing Oliver's reputation. He became an outcast at work, completely isolated within the company. In an uncomfortable atmosphere, the company soon wished for his resignation, and Oliver had to look for a new job. He was competent and had good sales performance. Preferred by older generations who don't use social media, he quickly found a new job. But human nature doesn't change. In less than 6 months, he was rumored to have made advances on the manager's wife and tried to expense motel charges from a business trip. He was fired and, even after joining new companies, kept causing troubles in his relationships and getting dismissed. After repeating this cycle, he is now hopping from one industry to another, being driven out from everywhere. Meanwhile, I maintained a relationship with my parents-in-law even after the divorce. Thanks to their care, I have been living peaceful days. It's because of their support that I was able to start anew after my relationship with Oliver ended. For a while after the divorce, I found it painful to take photos of children. Even though they got hurt betrayed by their son, they made an effort to show their good relationship and supported me. They helped me realize that my relationship with Oliver wasn't everything about marriage. They cared to give me the strength to believe again. One day, I captured a photo of my parents-in-law talking peacefully. I plan to feature this photo in my next online photo exhibition. They were quite embarrassed, but I think they'll be happy in the end. My name is Amy, and I turned 30 this year. Currently, I'm working in sales at an apparel brand, living a busy but fulfilling life. Today is our college reunion. Now that we're all around 30, everyone has taken their own path. Some are busy with work like me, others are married, and some even have kids. It's been years since we've all been able to gather like this. Amy! As I enter the venue, a friend spots me and waves, calling out. The gathering had already started, and my friends were huddled together, drinking. Hey, you must be tired, work's been busy, huh? Thanks, yeah. And wow, so many people turned up. We toast and catch up, sharing recent news and reminiscing. Long time no see, Amy. Turning around to the voice behind me, there was Estella, who used to be in the same club as me. It's been a while. She was always cute and charming, very popular, and I don't recall ever seeing her without a boyfriend. I'm engaged now. Really? Congratulations. Looking at her left ring finger, I saw a large diamond sparkling. A bit surprised by the ring, I expressed my congratulations, and she smiled. What about you? Not married yet? Not yet. I'm not in a hurry. Oh, that's so sad. I could tell the friend next to me was getting irritated by her words, but I subtly kept my emotions in check. It didn't bother me, and I didn't want to spoil the reunion with negativity. I'm enjoying my work for now. But you're already 30, right? The other side, knowing what was coming. She had always been like this since college. Always wanting to feel superior to others, looking down on them. My husband is super elite, you know. Look, he wanted me to have this ring. That's great for you. You were so pretty and popular in college. Maybe it's true what they say about beautiful women being too picky and missing out on marriage. I never intended that. The ultimate happiness for a woman is to marry a wonderful husband, but maybe you'll never have that chance, lol. She laughed mockingly, looking at me. Should I introduce you to a man? You must be lonely. I'm fine. I'm just too busy with work to think about marriage. Are you just pretending? You probably need someone else to make it happen for you. She left the place triumphantly, saying she would contact me again. I felt a wave of exhaustion, and my friends around me expressed their concern. She hasn't changed at all. Always wanting to be better than others, never listening. Yeah. What will you do if she contacts you about introducing a man? It's a joke, right? She's too busy for that. Even if she does, I'll decline. At that moment, I was optimistically thinking. That being engaged, she must be busy herself. But the very next day, she started sending me messages to introduce men. Of course, I refused every time. Dealing with that was a hassle in itself. One day, after finishing work and stepping outside the office. Amy. What? Waiting in front of the office was her. Seriously. You only ever send refusals, so I waited here. You haven't even been replying lately. What kind of men I prefer, what's wrong with the guys she's been trying to set me up with? These questions had become increasingly persistent recently. If I showed any preferences, I'd probably be accused of being too picky at 30, so responding had become a burden. I get it now. What do you get? That you haven't realized the joys of marriage and can't be proactive about it. So, I'm going to explain all the great things about marriage to you. With a face that showed no ill intent, she smiled. Being in front of the office, I couldn't just dismiss her coldly or ignore her. I had no choice but to lead her away, so I invited her to a restaurant. We entered the restaurant, but instead of focusing on the meal, she went on and on. About the wonders of marriage. How much she's loved. How rich her fiancé is, and even though they're only engaged, she has lots of money to spend freely. How she's a winner and I, unmarried, am a loser. How pitiful I am. And how she's doing all this for me. She sighed as she said this. See, if you stay the way you are now, you'll never find someone. That's why I'm helping you. No. I don't need it. I want you to be happy too, like me. Her smiling face seemed a bit scary. Despite her continued insistence on the joys of marriage, I firmly declined being set up with men. She seemed unsatisfied, but eventually, she seemed to give up on that. Still, she insisted on talking in person. Better than being ambushed in front of the office again, I thought, so I agreed. Amy. Sorry to keep you waiting. Then let's go. She pulled my arm and we started walking. I thought we were heading to a restaurant, but no. Where is this? I took care of the arrangements, let's go. She forcefully led me to a venue for a mixer, a place for men and women to meet. She confidently tried to check us in, so I quickly pulled her arm and stopped her, somehow convincing her to step away from the venue for a moment. I grabbed her shoulder. Hey! This is troubling. I can't do this. She, being engaged, shouldn't be at such a place either. When I stopped her, she frowned. I came reluctantly, just for your sake. I'm only accompanying, so it's fine. Wait. I have a boyfriend. I'm just waiting for my work to settle down before getting married. So you don't need to worry about me. Maybe it was wrong of me to stay silent until now. I never intended to publicize that I had a boyfriend, but because of that, we ended up here. Sorry. Oh, you don't need to pretend so much. Excuse me. If you hate parties that much, let's go home today. That's why you're still single. She laughed and left. I just didn't know what to do anymore. Good work today. It's late again. Looking at my watch, it's already past 11 p.m. Getting off at the nearest station, I hurried home, but heard footsteps behind me. When I slowed down, the footsteps also slowed. When I sped up, they sped up too. Was I being followed? The thought sent chills down my spine, and I broke out in a cold sweat. In a panic, I took out my mobile phone and made a call. As the ringing continued, I prayed for a quick answer, but then someone grabbed my shoulder from behind. Amy, right? I turned around in fear, to see a smiling man. A stranger I didn't recognize. How did he know my name? You must be mistaken. What's wrong? We've been messaging each other every day, haven't we? I've been waiting for you at the nearest station. The man said, smiling. I was too confused and scared to even speak, having no idea what he was talking about. Then, Amy. I heard a hurried voice calling my name. Turning around, there was my boyfriend Dennis, running towards me with his mobile phone to his ear. In surprise, I looked at my phone and saw it was still on a call. I must have left it on after dialing. Dennis. Sorry I'm late. He had been waiting for me at home, but when he got my call and sensed something was wrong, he rushed out to find me. I faced the bewildered stranger with Dennis. Excuse me, this is my girlfriend. But how do you know her? As I stood there scared and Dennis guarded, the man seemed confused. He claimed to have met me on a dating app. I don't use those. I firmly denied it. Could you show us the messages, if you have any? The man showed his phone, and sure enough, there were messages under my name. But they weren't from me. Even Dennis, looking over my shoulder, could tell. However, the photo registered on the app was indeed mine. A deep sense of fear overcame me. Who would impersonate me and why? Then it hit me, there was one person I could think of. I explained to the man that the messages were not from me. Realizing our obvious distress and wariness, he seemed to understand and left. He hadn't intended to act like a stalker. I was too busy to meet easily. I often returned home late. And that if he waited at my nearest station, he might get to meet me. He was led to believe these messages by the impersonator. I called the person who came to mind, and she answered immediately. Estella? Hi, Amy, what's up? I need to confirm something. Yes? You haven't been impersonating me and messaging men on a dating app, have you? I hoped I was wrong, but she just laughed off my question. Why, how did you know? I was planning a surprise for you once I found the right person. Surprise. She said she was messaging on the dating app on my behalf, as I'm too reserved and lazy to do it myself. Her complete lack of malice in doing so was what made it even more terrifying. Please, just stop. It's none of your business. But you must be feeling so pitiful, surely you want to be like me? She seemed genuinely convinced of this. She's really crazy. My boyfriend, who had been listening to the call, muttered in disbelief. Sorry for dragging you into this. No, it's fine. He was relieved that I wasn't alone when this happened. But what should I do? I never expected someone to be this unreasonable. The fact that she seemed so innocuous made it even more problematic. Why is she so obsessed with you? I think it's because she liked a guy I dated back in college. I heard about it long after we broke up. But why would she do this now? If she resented me, wouldn't she want me to stay single forever? She's engaged and supposedly happy, about to marry a wealthy guy. Then, maybe you should start investigating these things. My boyfriend suggested. What? Look. He showed me the screen. It was the homepage of the dating app we had seen earlier. Click here for profiles earning over $100,000, screening required. It led to another app. And what was the name of that party? He asked. Searching the name on my phone. I knew it. It was also for people earning over $100,000. Meaning she was trying to set me up with men earning less than her. Such a devious tactic. I blurted out. Then, I know this might not be the right time to say this. Yeah. As I was stressing out, he turned to face me, looking serious. And a bit nervous, making me nervous too. How about we get married? His unexpected proposal took me by surprise. Married? I've been thinking about it for a while. But you were busy with work. Now might be the right time. Getting married might stop her obsession. At least, it would put an end to her unwarranted meddling and setting up random meetups. But using you like that. And getting married for such a reason. I want to be used by you. I'm also seizing this opportunity. Maybe this timing will get you to marry me, he said with a shy smile. A month later, I called her. Amy, what's up today? I wanted to talk and thank you. Walking together, she tilted her head in confusion. Eh? For what? Here. Everyone's already gathered. Everyone? Leaving the bewildered Estella behind, I entered the restaurant. Everyone had already gathered. Sorry for making you wait, you could have started without me. We couldn't start without the guest of honor. I thanked my friends and took a glass from them, handing one to Estella too. Guest of honor. Congratulations on your marriage. Congrats. Everyone raised their glasses and started to drink. Only Estella was confused about what was happening. Maybe I had been a bit cruel. I've decided to get married. What? How? She was shocked. That time you registered me on that app without my permission. That dangerous mistake. My boyfriend said he couldn't leave me alone after that. It was also the right time as my work was settling down. I showed her the engagement ring we had picked out together. I'm sorry I didn't explain properly earlier. But I didn't think you'd believe me if I just told you. That's why I decided to invite her here. She trembled, falling silent. Amy, well done. Dennis. Then, my boyfriend arrived. He had been invited as it was a celebration of our engagement. Nice to meet you, I'm Amy's fiancé. We've been living together for a while. Thanks for giving us the push towards marriage. He smiled, perhaps a bit too pointedly. I nudged him with my elbow to calm him down. You've been living together? Yes, he's been supporting me since I was studying for the bar exam. I want to repay his kindness, but he's too busy with his work. I'm already getting plenty of support from you. Bar exam? Yes, I'm a lawyer. He smiled. And your salary is? Well, it's decent. He was confident. But. Estella showed us her engagement ring. It's a coincidence, I'm marrying a lawyer too. She seemed upset that I was happy, but didn't want to admit defeat. I didn't like her sudden marriage announcement. I could sense her feelings. Oh, a fellow lawyer? Which firm? He asked. It's on the business card. She fumbled for her card, flustered. He checked it and frowned. Never heard of this firm. Just like he did with the app and party incident, he quickly searched on his phone. Oh? It's not here. The search only brought up similar but different names. And also, he continued, lawyers get a registration number when they become one, and in this state, it's usually 7 digits. This card has 10 digits. So, this number doesn't exist. Estella's face went pale. You must be kidding me. No, I'm clearly not. He replied calmly. No, that can't be true. I've always been on dates at the top floor restaurant of a hotel, enjoying full-course meals, and I even received 100 roses on my birthday. This ring is a 2-carat diamond, after all. She frantically called her supposed fiancé. Hey, I'm at a friend's engagement party, and they're saying there's no record of your lawyer number or your law firm. From her mobile phone, a loud angry voice shouted, Shut up, woman! Followed by the sound of the call being disconnected. That can't be! She collapsed onto the floor, sitting down without regard for her surroundings. My boyfriend then added his piece. I have something to tell you, right here, right now. I love Amy. Her strengths and her weaknesses. I respect her dedication to the things she loves. Although she doesn't want to make a big deal out of this, impersonating someone and using their photos on an app is a criminal act. If it happens again, we'll take legal action. Just so you know. No! Urged by my boyfriend, I turned my back on her. As I walked away, receiving congratulatory words from friends, I glanced back. She remained crumbled on the spot, biting her lips. She left soon after and didn't show up at the gathering again. Later, I heard through the grapevine that when she returned home, she found nothing there. The supposed lawyer had blocked her calls and went silent. Recently passed the bar exam and have no money for my parents' hospital bills. I want to open my own office near our new home. I need funding for that. Believing these words, she had quickly given him money. Not having enough in savings, she even borrowed from consumer finance companies. As for the large diamond ring she boasted about, it turned out to be a fake when appraised, something sold in a novelty store for $7. Later, Dennis and I got married. Our life didn't change much since we were already living together, but seeing my wedding ring during work always brings a smile to my face. The realization that I'm married to him fills me with joy. He respects my dedication to my work, and we support each other. What is happiness? For me, it's being married to someone who treasures me. My name is Mary. I'm 28 years old. After graduating from college with a degree in life design, I've been working at a design company for 5 years. I have a partner and we recently had a wedding. My partner's name is Kevin. Kevin works in sales at an advertising agency. He's kind and trustworthy. We'd been gradually preparing for our wedding, amidst our work and daily lives. Both of us are only children, and our parents were eagerly looking forward to our marriage. But there's this unbelievable person who tried to ruin our wedding. This time, I want to talk about that person, Rory, a colleague of Kevin's at work. It was a few months after Kevin and I got engaged and had sent out our wedding invitations. I was invited to a cafe by my college friend, Kate. It's been a while, Kate. What did you want to talk about? Mary, what should I do? My boyfriend, he broke off our engagement. Broke off the engagement? What do you mean? Asked by a coworker, Kate had reluctantly joined a party to make up numbers. Just put in an appearance for a minute, and you can leave early. She was told that. I had kept declining again and again because I was engaged, but I couldn't refuse outright. Kate didn't think she drank much, but she got quite drunk. Her memory was fuzzy, and next thing she knew, it was morning. And then... I was apparently assaulted while I was drunk and asleep. No way! By one of the men at the party? Kate confided with tears streaming down her face. Then, she touched her belly. I was speechless. Kate had gotten pregnant that night at the party. She had maintained a chaste relationship with her fiancé. It definitely wasn't her fiancé's child. Kate couldn't keep it a secret and confessed everything honestly. Then, her fiancé exploded in anger. He scolded her for her careless behavior and called off their engagement. After telling me this, Kate broke down in tears. What should I do? I'm so stupid. I never thought this would happen. Kate, it's not your fault. The man who assaulted a drunk woman is to blame. It's a crime. We must make the man responsible face the consequences. We must never give up. I decided to be there for Kate, no matter what. So, do you know who the guy is? Yeah. There were 3 men, but the most suspicious one is... I was shocked to hear the name. There was someone with the same name among Kevin's colleagues. When I told Kevin about my conversation with Kate, he looked pained. Rory! Damn it! What a terrible thing he's done. Is it really him? The Rory who's your colleague? Yeah. He was bragging a while back about sleeping with a woman from a trading company. We can't forgive this, Kevin said, clenching his fists tightly. Rory worked in sales at the same advertising agency as Kevin, and he's the son of the executive director. His personality was frivolous and he was a bit of a show-off. He tended to get carried away and acted recklessly. Moreover, he lacked a sense of responsibility and tended to shift blame and escaped when things went south. Someone else will clean up his mess, he thinks. He's the worst. He's even blamed me for his mistakes several times. Truly awful. We must make Rory pay for what he did to Kate. In secret, we began to help Kate prepare to sue Rory. Then, a few days later, the day of my wedding with Kevin arrived. The issue with Kate was still unresolved, but the wedding couldn't be postponed. I did contact Kate to apologize. I'm sorry, my friend is going through a tough time, and here I am getting married. Don't worry about it. I'm sorry for canceling my attendance so suddenly. Kate congratulated me on my wedding multiple times. Determined to honor her feelings, I decided to make today's ceremony beautiful. But one thing bothered me. Rory, a colleague of the groom, was also there. I'm really sorry. If we didn't invite him, it would cause trouble later. It's okay. We can't help it. Let's make him pay for his crimes after this is over. Rory was making a scene, drinking more than enough welcome drinks. He was more conspicuous than us at our wedding reception. And it wasn't in a good way. His face was bright red. His eyes leered. And he wouldn't stop talking. His inner ugliness was all too apparent on the outside. This man ruined my dear friend's future. I wished he would just leave. But I couldn't say such a thing. I endured it, following Kevin's lead. All the while, Rory continued his commotion. As the reception progressed, it was time for the best man's speech. Suddenly, Rory enthusiastically raised his hand. Hey, hey, hey! Let me as a colleague say a few words first. It wasn't planned, but Kevin's dad allowed it, thinking it was a good opportunity. Kevin and I exchanged glances. We had a bad feeling. Rory, unsteady on his feet, went to the microphone and bowed. Then he grinned. Actually, I have some unfortunate news for everyone here. Our groom, Kevin. You see, he once impregnated my girlfriend. The banquet hall erupted into chaos. Everyone's attention turned to Kevin. I saw Kevin's mom faint in the family section of the groom's side. My relatives stood up one after another and demanding. What do you mean? Explain this. Kevin was cornered and visibly shaken. The staff was confused. Rory was laughing loudly. He clearly enjoying the turmoil he caused. I couldn't stand it anymore. Enough is enough. What's fun about making up nonsense and troubling people? You're the one who assaulted my friend and got her pregnant. I know it. I will never forgive you for what you did to my friend, and we will definitely sue you. My outburst suddenly quieted the hall. I borrowed a microphone from a nearby staff member and continued. Recently, my friend was assaulted at a party and became pregnant against her will. She's in utter despair. The perpetrator of that assault is him, Rory. No, not true. Don't make up such nonsense. It's not a lie, we have evidence. We conducted a DNA test on the fetus. It didn't match with any man but you. What? When did they do such a test? Everything is almost ready for the lawsuit. Be prepared. Honestly, I didn't want to invite you here. Kevin and I struggled with it. But the incident came to light after we sent the invitations, so we endured it. At the request, I passed the microphone to Kevin. He sighed deeply, glared at Rory, and said, You recklessly lie ruined Mary and my reception. I'll never forget this grudge. You will pay for your crimes. Now, all eyes in the hall were on Rory. Caught in his guilt, Rory started yelling pathetically. Kevin, you're getting too big for your boots. It's your fault for getting married. You shouldn't have gotten married before me, someone like you. Rory was subdued by security and escorted out of the venue. He continued to resist pathetically until the end. As order was restored, the reception resumed. Kevin's boss, Tom, addressed the situation. I apologize for my subordinate's terrible behavior. He will be dealt with severely. His misconduct and lies have been a major issue within our company. As his superior, I deeply regret not guiding him properly. Tom apologized. And then he esteered Kevin's honor. Meanwhile, Kevin's sincerity is well known in our company. Even when troubled by that man earlier, Kevin handled it calmly. His focus on maintaining harmony in the department, rather than his personal interests, is truly admirable. There aren't many men as trustworthy and promising as Kevin. Mary, you're lucky. You've found a wonderful partner. I sincerely congratulate the two of you on your marriage. Tom concluded. The hall erupted in applause. Then, relatives and friends came to congratulate us. Everyone apologized to Kevin, saying they were sorry for doubting him. Kevin just gave a wry smile. A warm atmosphere returned to the hall. If it weren't for that man, Kate could have enjoyed such happiness too. While enjoying the reception, my hatred for Rory deepened. Later, I heard Rory was hung out to dry at Kevin's company. Tom was really angry and explained everything at the executive meeting. The executive director, Rory's father, was present. He deeply apologized to the president and everyone in the meeting room. Please allow me to apologize, as a father. My son has caused you all great inconvenience. I'm truly sorry. Dad! No, it's not like that. I didn't mean to. About the party, it was just the alcohol and an irresistible force. Shut up. I don't want to hear another word from you. I made a mistake in how I raised you. You're a burden to the company, a disgrace to our family. You're the blemish of my life. Even after being disowned by his father, Rory continued his pathetic resistance. But his misconduct and foolishness were already well known to all. Not a single employee sided with Rory or tried to help him. Eventually, Rory chose to resign voluntarily. Everyone at work was relieved. Kevin told me that. It was truly pitiful to be rejoiced at one's departure. Naturally, no one attempted to organize a farewell party for Rory. Packing his belongings, Rory left the company with drooped his shoulders. There were developments in the assault case too. Kate's former fiancé filed a claim for damages against Rory. The cost of the engagement ring, the money paid to the venue, cancellation fees, and more. He had covered most of it. The claim for damages is quite substantial. Kate, what about you? The Rory's lawyer offered a settlement, right? I absolutely refuse to just take the money and end this. He must atone for his crime. Kate no longer had the baby in her womb. She had a miscarriage at 4 months. Likely it was due to the intense stress and sorrow she endured. The sad experience seemed to have made Kate stronger. The amount of damages demanded from Rory by Kate's ex-fiancé was around $30,000. Rory tried to borrow money from his parents, but they firmly refused. So, he had to cover it all with his savings and loans. Rory tried to find a new job but struggled to make it to the final interview. His frivolous appearance must be getting in the way, Kevin speculated. Recently, Rory has been working multiple part-time jobs just to earn his daily expenses. Most of the money he earns, however, goes towards paying off his debts. A few days later, I got a message from Kate saying she had filed a lawsuit against Rory. She was ready to fight, with her lawyer by her side. DNA tests and testimonies confirmed that Rory was undoubtedly the father of the child. Taking advantage of someone drunk and unconscious to commit a forceful act falls under the crime of sexual assault. The statutory penalty is a fixed-term imprisonment of at least 5 years. Unfortunately for Kate, Rory's lawyer was quite skilled. In the end, Rory was sentenced to 4 years in prison. As he was leaving the courtroom, he repeatedly apologized to Kate. I was apologized to over and over, but I never thought of forgiving him. That's right. He should live the rest of his life atoning for his sins. Rory's actions, driven by his desires, disrupted Kate's life. The extinguishing of a small life was not unrelated to him. The crime committed by Rory was not only taking the precious life of a fetus, but also subjecting the mother to immense stress. Rory, who acted recklessly without thinking of the consequences, caused suffering to many. He should spend his entire life atoning for his sins. I strongly wished it. The 4 years without Rory seemed to bring calm to many. I heard Kate recently started a new relationship. I told him everything. About being a victim of sexual crime, about the miscarriage. It was hard. But he said it must have been tough. I'll take care of everything. It's wonderful. Really wonderful that you found such a great person. When I heard the story, I couldn't help but tear up myself. A person who knew about Kate's emotional scars and the details of the incident, yet still chooses to stay by her side. He seems to be a much more understanding and kinder man than her previous fiancé. In these past 4 years, Kevin and I also became parents. Our child is a boy, now a year and a half old. Kevin looks after him when I'm not around. Every day, we're fumbling through parenting, hustling, and bustling. How about you, Mary? How's married life? Is the baby cute? Thanks to you, all is well. We fight sometimes, but our child is unconditionally adorable. I'm envious. I want a child soon too. I still think about the one I lost. Kate. Don't blame yourself, okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm looking forward. Someday, I want to welcome a child with my current partner. And this time, I want to love them with all my heart. Kate's emotional wounds will probably never completely heal. But I'm sure the happy times ahead will heal her. Let's both keep pushing forward. That day, Kate and I waved goodbye to each other. One day, Kevin told me he had encountered Rory, who had been released from prison. When he was walking down the street during work, Rory approached him. His hairstyle and look were different, but his eyes and way of speaking were the same. Kevin said with a look of disgust. Apparently, Rory had asked him for money. He's been going around asking acquaintances for money, even just $1. When he asked me if he managed to borrow any, I just replied, "Don't ask." Of course. No one would want to deal with him. Everyone knows about his crimes. What happened next? He started saying, "Why me?" So I scolded him. It's your own fault your life is a mess. Reflect on it. Rejected by Kevin, Rory slumped his shoulders and disappeared into the crowd. Later, Kevin heard a disheartening story about Rory from the executive director. Rory had cunningly swindled money from a young relative who had just started working. That fool. He said he could multiply the money through investments. How awful. What happened to the money? We caught him and made him return it all. Then, we cut him off. I'm fed up. I'm really sorry for the trouble my son caused, especially at your wedding. If he troubles you again, please contact me right away. Thank you so much, sir. The executive director looked very tired, perhaps due to the stress. Having a child with such a character brought unimaginable hardships to parents. Kevin felt truly sorry for him. He strongly hoped his unfilial son, Rory, would receive the punishment he deserved. A few months later, on a holiday afternoon, Kevin and I went for a drive. The purpose was to get our child to nap. When we put him in the car, he fell asleep quickly. There was a large river running through the city, with vast riverbanks on both sides. When I was gazing out absent-mindedly, I let out an unintentional "Aw, what's wrong? Did you forget something?" "No, it's not that. I just saw someone down by the riverbank." "It was him." "Him? You mean Rory?" "Yes. He was dirty and disheveled, walking with others dressed similarly." Even from a distance, his walk and gestures made it clear. It was undoubtedly Rory. Now, it seemed he found a place to stay somewhere along this riverbank. He was probably scraping his living by collecting cans and old books to sell. He might be lining up for soup kitchens, or perhaps even scavenging leftover food. I didn't feel sorry for him. Rather, it seemed fitting for someone like him. Rory, who hurt my friend and tried to ruin Kevin's and my wedding. For years in prison was too lenient. I thought he deserved to atone for his actions over a much longer period. Hoped he would fall even lower than where he was now. I strongly wished that. Life for Kevin and me has been smooth sailing. Calm, without major troubles, just as we'd hoped. Our relationship with both of our in-laws is good, and our child is growing up healthy. Neither Kevin nor I have any intention of spoiling our child. We don't want to raise someone who finds joy in others' suffering. What's right and what's wrong. What it means to behave as a decent human being. I want to be a parent who can properly convey these values. Rory's crimes have led us to these convictions. In that sense, his existence may not be entirely useless.